Why is there so much tribalism in this world of crypto? What's that all about? Even within communities like the XRP community, we see these sort of splits and rifts, especially come up lately with discussion around the buyback models. So let's talk about that and figure out what's the root cause. Hey, I'm Molly. Today we're going to talk about an interesting topic: tribalism within the crypto world. It exists on many levels, in my opinion, in my observation. And I find it a unique phenomenon because I've had a long career, and most of it sort of started with the start of phase two of the internet, when ad models became the way for people to make money in the internet. This is kind of around the year 2000. Lots of companies cropped up. I worked at a company that was a measurement company that measured online advertising. We worked with all sorts of what we call web publishers. And most of these companies don't exist anymore, but they were sort of like the Yahoos of the world: Excite, Lycos, AOL. There was a bunch of web properties. They all kind of competed with each other. And there was a definite sort of struggle to see which of these properties would end up surviving. And there was a lot of the companies like mine that sort of sold the shovels. And we measured and had different aspects of it. Anyway, there was no tribalism in this era. There was no team, AOL versus team Lycos. There was certainly some competition if you worked at those companies, but people who were just users of those products or services or whatever, nobody like got into arguments with other people about which was better. You might have had a point of view. There wasn't this like fighting that you see with, Bitcoin people versus XRP people, or and even within the XRP community, we see this division. It's kind of strange, and I don't really think it's healthy because I think it might be manufactured. We'll talk about that in a second. But why is it present in this world when it wasn't a thing in the early stages of the internet? And I'm very much of the school of thought that this blockchain technology is just the next version of the internet. We are taking what was working very well, except lacking in one major thing, which is the ability to move money. And now we've added this money movement, money storage, tokenization aspect, which will now make the internet far more effective in many ways. So that's the difference, though, with this new thing with the blockchain, is that there's real money involved. People were not investing in Yahoo, not the young people who were users. You could have, a lot of those companies went public and people did buy shares, but that wasn't a thing like it is a thing to buy crypto. And I think there's also this zero sum philosophy, which may be true actually, that if I'm an investor in, Solana and I'm team Solana, Solana can't be successful if every other blockchain is successful too. Like there's this perception that the world doesn't necessarily need 100 or 2,000 crypto projects to be successful. So some will get weeded out. And so if I fight for and advocate for, the crypto team that I'm on, then maybe that will be more successful than others. I do want to hop over to the XRP community because this is what's been on my mind today, this past week. That I'm participating in this subcommittee that is looking to build financial models to estimate valuations, fair market value for XRP, which is a digital asset. And the reaction to these models is quite bizarre, because if we were building models to forecast the price of like Tesla stock, or even if we were doing this for Bitcoin, I don't think we would get this reaction. Like I actually got some threats to me in my DMs that, if I don't stop doing this, I'm going to be canceled and all this stuff. And I'm putting my career at risk. And I was like, I don't think this is my career necessarily, but fair enough. I heeded the warning. And I was like, this reaction is just so bizarre because, I've worked on a bunch of models in my career, not this type of thing, but marketing models. No one really cared about them. They were used for something. And, the people on this valuation committee, they're professional, in their lane. We have like an accountant who's extremely capable, an investment banker on there. There's a theoretical mathematician who's a futures trader. Like there are, you all know Jimmy, who's a corporate attorney, like all these valuations are part of that merger and acquisition world. These are not sort of people who decided last week, hey, let's just figure out how to do financial modeling. They all have been done some kind of financial calculations in their career, many of whom for decades. Like, we don't have any like 22-year-olds on the team. Like, they've been around the block. And so the exercises that we're doing are done in a wide variety of industries, which I don't think is a surprise. Financial models are used in insurance, they're used in investment banking, they're used in accounting. Like, this is not a revolutionary concept. Now, applying it to a digital asset like XRP that is used as a store of value and a way to move money, that is quite revolutionary, which is, I think, the appeal to many of us, myself included, kind of like being part of a cutting edge thing. But the reaction to these valuations, now I get it, they're high numbers, but so was the price of Bitcoin last fall or whatever, a year ago. So was the price of Tesla stock and Amazon stock. Like, things go up in value sometimes over the course of years to a pretty high degree. The idea that like this is like dangerous misinformation is just absolutely bizarre to me. Now I understand, and now here's where I think this tribalism idea comes in, and why I think it reminds me a lot of political divisions that we see. And there's a great allegory about a box, a clear plastic container that has two kinds of ants living in it. It has some red ants living in it, some black ants living in it, and they have their little ant hills and their little cavern things that they build because they're very clever ants. And everybody's living in peace. Then along comes a third party, takes this container, shakes it up. Now everything is chaotic, and these ants start fighting, killing each other. And the interesting part about this is that they're not aware of the third party who came along and shook the jar. All they're aware of is that things are chaotic, and there's like my enemy who is different than me, is on the other side of the proverbial fence that I have to fight with. It'd be interesting in that allegory if the ants were aware of the jar thing being shaken, whether they could acknowledge that in the moment and say, hey, you know what, red ant, you're not my enemy here. If we were to work together, I think we should have a conversation with that guy who shook our jar thing and say, you better stop doing that because we would like to live a peaceful existence as ants building cool ant house things. That doesn't happen. Think about my entire life. There has been some divisive political issue where we are split in half, left, right, Democrat, Republican, pro this, anti this. It's been, there have been a social issue forever. Every election cycle brings up some divisive, polarizing issue. I mean, abortion was one that's just gone on forever. Gay marriage has gone on forever. And it always just seems like there's some new thing to divide us. And you wonder, kind of is a little bit like this ant jar, that this third party comes along and shakes up that jar and keeps everybody fighting with each other so that they're distracted and not paying attention to other things. I'm going to get to the XRP in a second, but I did want to talk about one of these books that influenced my life tremendously, Edward Griffin's Creature from Jekyll Island, because it really made me rethink some of the stories I've been told about history. And he has a thesis, which hard to prove, but lays out a very logical argument, that the Civil War in the United States back in the 1860s was actually manufactured, and that there was a group of European bankers who wanted to purchase land west of the Mississippi, but they were going to get a hard time, or would be given a hard time by the United States because it would be a threat, and the United States wanted to expand westward, so they were going to have some competition for this. So they decided that they would antagonize the North and the South of the United States separately with two separate issues. They used a bunch of trade things with the North, and it was a lot about the price of goods. They kind of had this mechanism that they manipulated markets to create unrest and frustration, and ended up they told the North it's the South's fault, they told the South it's the North's fault, and they got everybody fighting. I'm simplifying the story a bit just to make my point, and ended up starting the Civil War, people, North and South fighting each other, tremendous number of lives lost, which is tragic and sad, and kept everyone very distracted so that nobody happened to notice the land that was being purchased west of the Mississippi by European entities who ended up doing very well in that land deal in the long run. That is not the first, that is not the only example of that type of situation that Ed Griffin uses in his book. It reminded me a little bit of the XRP situation we're experiencing right now. I personally have been experiencing last week because I've been sharing some of the model results. We seem to have these two groups of people. We have the sort of retail investor who has been frustrated that there's just been no price action with XRP. People have invested money that they don't have tons of money to be investing. So this is a meaningful investment to them and had really high hopes that this would be something that would turn into a higher price point. Then you have an XRP developer community more on the tech side who really believe in the power of the technology and that a ton of use cases can come to be. And there also has not been a whole lot of development going on in the XRP ledger relative to other blockchains, specifically Ethereum blockchain that has seen a ton of VC money, ton of development, tons of new tokens and coins, even Binance Smart Chain. Lots more growth projects appear to be on those blockchains than we have seen on the XRP ledger. So you got these two groups who are kind of frustrated with each other. And the interesting thing is that we're in a jar, and that jar was actually shaken by a third party. And that third party had an agent who was the SEC. And this agent, the SEC, came along and shook up that jar. And without realizing it, the red ants and the black ants in this metaphor, the retail sort of investors and then the techie developers, they got all shaken up. And both agendas and hopes and goals were disrupted. But instead of really figuring out who is this third party, who is this SEC and agent for, there's a lot of fighting amongst each other. And so I've seen this glaringly with the model results, and that I have one group of people who message me and support, like, this is awesome. We know that this token has great utility, and the price has been suppressed, and we're mad about it. Thank you for bringing awareness to it. Then we have this techie group who's like, all you care about is the price. We're more interested in building here. When you distract everybody with this price talk, it's going to dissuade developers from wanting to come build on here. This is what is called a paradox. I actually love understanding paradoxes. They're fascinating. I've done threads on them before. It is a situation where you have two seemingly contradictory statements that are both true. It is true. More people should be building on the XRP ledger. We would see actually real price action with XRP as a token if there was more widespread adoption, more use of the platform and use of the token for a bunch of different businesses, and those aren't being built at the rate that everyone would like. So there's frustration on the part of developers, and there is a belief that if everybody's just here to make money and not here to actually build usable stuff, none of us are going to get anywhere. I agree, that is true. Then you have the retail holder who is frustrated that things aren't being built too, and they want to see a return on their investment. That they got into this because they had optimism that this was a great blockchain and great platform to build on, and it hasn't materialized. What I think both groups fail to realize, I think some do, maybe just not everyone, is that we have this third party. This third party caused a lot of damage to both the developer community and to the retail holders. Why did the SEC harm the developer community? Because VC money is not investing in the XRP ledger because there's this stain on the XRP token that it's unclear. Is this going to be labeled a security or not? We don't know. And a VC is not going to want to come along and dump 10 million bucks into something with that kind of uncertainty. That's why, the A16Zs of the world are putting their Animoca are putting their money on blockchains that have a free pass, that have that kind of clarity, because there's less of a risk when you're investing your money. So the SEC case has very much harmed growth of software and use cases on the XRP ledger, because unfortunately it takes money to hire a team of developers. It takes money to build software. It takes money to build a business that operates on the blockchain. And there's, you can either have your own money and bootstrap it as you go, but generally software companies tend to grow more quickly if they have outside investor money. And there's just reluctance on the part of the investor community to do that because of this SEC lawsuit. It's dragged on for 2 years and it's hung like a cloud, which has really harmed the ability for the platform to grow from a tech perspective. So I don't see there a need to be for us to fight with each other. And I understand that, like, talking about price action that feels unrealistic can seem like a waste of time. Unless you were to understand, please, I want to make this point very clear. The purpose of the buyback project is to quantify the harm caused by the SEC. That's really it. Now, how that will be rectified in the end, will there be a lawsuit? Will there be some sort of damages claim? Will there be a buyback? I don't know. We're sort of figuring all that out. I think at this point, we just want to make it very clear to the agent and whomever the agent represents that we are aware of what they have done, and we are aware that they caused financial harm to not only retail holders, but they have dramatically hindered the adoption of the XRP ledger. And the models that we have built are not prediction. So I have built quite a few models, and I've built predictive models. I have built forecasting models. I have not built these financial models to date, but one thing I am very clear on is that the models are scenarios. We are specifically answering the question of what would have happened with the value of XRP out a couple of years had this lawsuit not happened. And then we actually applied, at least with the first model, collateralization model, applied a net present value to bring it back to today's value. So one of the people criticized that if we hadn't done that, but no, yes, we did normalize the price back to today. However, it's a scenario. What if? What would have happened if these conditions had been met? I actually don't think that price is going to happen, the 122 that we just released in the collateralization model, because it assumes the SEC lawsuit hadn't happened and the blockchain had been allowed to grow as it was intended to. But that, you can't undo that. You can't unscramble an egg. That damage happened. The agent, on behalf of whomever they represented, took that action and have held back adoption of the XRP ledger, and consequently the price of XRP from adoption because of that. So none of these models are saying we think this is going to happen, because there are scenarios that are trying to control for conditions, and those ideal conditions in the model they're not possible. We can't get those 2 years back. Now, if the lawsuit gets settled and all these things start to grow, that's fine. But back to the core thesis I told you about this committee is that we want to quantify the harm financially that the SEC caused. Even if the lawsuit gets rectified and people start building like crazy, that harm and that damage still happened. That was still a thing. And there may be damages for people. The funny thing about my involvement is I did not have any XRP in 2020. So if there's a lawsuit and people who had a token at that point would get damages, I'm not in that. And actually, I'm fine with it. I'm just pissed because I think that what the SEC did is totally unacceptable. And I do not have any patience for government being used as a weapon to protect the interests of a monopoly. I have zero patience and tolerance for that. So I will happily volunteer my time. I'll make these videos. I'll make pretty infographics to support that cause in the name of justice. I don't know if I'm going to get any money from any of this. I don't really care. If I want to make money, there's far more effective ways for me to do that than to talk about the XRP buyback models. So I would love for this community to realize that we are two ants that have been put in this jar, and a third party came along and shook that jar and has gotten us to fight with each other, when in fact, the third party is the one where we should be focusing our attention. This is also kind of representative of some things that are going on in the world, and we have this very small group of people who are very influential globally. They like to keep us all fighting with each other. Imagine if we stopped fighting with each other and actually worked together and told this third party that they are no longer going to be manipulating us, messing with us, taking our money, or otherwise causing harm and damage, and that train is leaving the station and we are done. So I would, if I could have my dream for what's going to happen as a result of this XRP buyback stuff, it's that it's going to unify all of us, get rid of this manufactured tribalism that isn't even real, and let us move forward with the world we want, and tell this third party who has been meddling with things that they are no longer welcome. So if you like this video, please hit the like button. See you next one.